warning Canada could take over the U.S.
President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never ever happen.
Having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale.
A quiet shift has been building behind the scenes, but now it's exploding into full view and the US is feeling it. Canada, long seen as the reliable neighbor in America's shadow, is no longer playing support. It's stepping into the spotlight, reshaping the future of trade, technology, and energy with a boldness no one saw coming. While American giants like Ford, GM, and Walmart wrestle with rising costs and supply chain headaches, Canada is pulling ahead, landing billion-dollar deals, snapping up critical minerals, and locking in the future of electric vehicles. High-paying tech jobs are moving north, supply chains are shifting, and for the first time in a generation, decisions that shape the global economy aren't flowing out of DC. They're being drafted in Ottawa. Something big is unfolding, and it's changing who leads the next era of economic power. While global headlines fixated on tech rivalries and tariff standoffs, a quiet transformation was gaining speed to the north. In Quebec, and the mineral-rich ground of Yukon, Canada was laying down a blueprint that would pull it from the sidelines and place it in the middle of a global industrial shift. But it wasn't only extraction that was taking place. It was planning, long-term, deliberate, and now showing real results. Canada wasn't simply collecting minerals to ship off to the highest bidder. It was building leverage, turning lithium, nickel, cobalt, and rare earths into the building blocks of its next economic chapter. These aren't resources anyone can afford to ignore. They're essential to every electric vehicle, every advanced battery system, and nearly every defense-grade electronic that will define future warfare and mobility. Even with a slight drop in production in 2023, caused by temporary pullbacks at Glencore's Raglan and Sudbury sites, Canada remained among the top producers of nickel worldwide. Ontario kept production steady, while the federal government invested $10 million, 0 cents, to ramp up rare earth development in Quebec and Labrador. That money went toward roads, ports, and the core infrastructure that makes long-term trade work, the kind of groundwork that's easy to overlook until the benefits start rolling in. The timing couldn't have been sharper. When the US passed the Inflation Reduction Act, it effectively handed Canada a golden opportunity. Under the new rules, electric vehicle makers had to source their critical minerals from countries that had formal trade ties with the United States. Canada, already rich in those materials, instantly became indispensable. Without its supply, the EV industry would be stuck. Instead of lobbying or complaining, Canada moved with precision. By the time the US even began its pivot toward electric vehicles, Canada had already broken ground on major facilities and locked down long-term contracts. Stellantis and LG announced a massive battery factory in Windsor. The federal and Ontario governments responded with $15 billion, 0 cents in support. This wasn't a gesture, it was a declaration. Canada wasn't aiming to be a player, it was aiming to build the field. And then came Volkswagen. The German automaker picked St. Thomas, Ontario as the home of its first North American gigafactory. That decision triggered another wave of public funding, $13 billion, 0 cents, in tax breaks, and a $700 million 0 cents grant from Ottawa. At the same time, Quebec launched a regional EV supply chain of its own, supporting Ultium CAM, a partnership between General Motors and POSCO, with a $150 million 0 cents loan to build a cathode plant. Another $150 million 0 cents was given to Volta Canada to kickstart a copper foil facility in Granby. None of these were isolated moves. They were all pieces of a bigger design. Canada was aiming to control every part of the electric vehicle supply chain, from the raw minerals in its ground to the advanced components being shipped out to factories. With the US crediting EVs built in North America and recognizing Canadian production as part of that network, the two systems were beginning to mesh. What set Canada apart was momentum. While debates dragged on in Washington and funding got caught in legislative gridlock, Canada kept the wheel turning, signing deals, funding factories, and building partnerships. American companies, facing rising tariffs and unpredictable costs, began turning northward. In May 2025, Costco's CEO announced a shift. The company was moving private label production closer to the point of sale. Canada became a central piece in that move, offering a workaround to mounting US-China trade barriers. Others were watching and more were following. One of the more revealing developments came from the US Department of Defense. In August 2024, it allocated $20 million, 0 cents, under the Defense Production Act to help build a cobalt refinery in Ontario. Canada's government added $3,660,000, 0 cents. Construction began before the year ended. That wasn't a routine project. Cobalt is critical for both electric vehicles and military-grade tech. Until recently, China held most of that supply. The US partnering with Canada was a signal it wanted security, and it was willing to build it next door. By early 2025, Canada was already covering 71% of the US potash imports, half of its refined zinc, and nearly a quarter of its nickel supply. Those numbers reflected more than trade. They pointed to dependency, the kind that reshapes foreign policy and realigns economic strategies. And Canada wasn't staying within the borders of the USMCA. That agreement remained important, but Ottawa had been building a much wider network. Since 2022, it had secured strong trade agreements with the European Union, the United Kingdom, South Korea, and nearly every key player in the ASEAN region. It was also locked into the CPTPP, a major Pacific trade pact. These weren't symbolic moves. They gave Canadian exporters preferred access to markets representing 2/3 of the world's total GDP. Canada's $2.3 billion 0 cents Indo-Pacific strategy, launched in late 2022, was at the heart of this global turn. It was focused on infrastructure, logistics, and long-term diplomacy, especially in India, Vietnam, Indonesia, and South Korea. The payoff didn't take long. By March 2025, Canada's exports to non-US markets jumped by almost 25% in a single month. Diversification, once a goal on paper, was now showing up in trade data. Companies across the globe started to see Canada as more than a supplier. It became a destination. Foreign direct investment hit $50.3 billion 0 cents in 2023, a 9% increase over the year before, pushing Canada into 6th place globally. That wasn't driven by speculation. The money went into strategic sectors, ports, rail hubs, data systems, and manufacturing corridors. Winnipeg's Centerport, now the largest inland port in North America, is a prime example. With seamless rail, road, and air connections, it allows goods to travel from Asia to the US Midwest faster than traditional coastal routes. It's the kind of network companies can rely on when time, cost, and stability all matter. In May 2025, Nutrien announced a new terminal in the Pacific Northwest to support potash exports to Asia, backed by long-term supply contracts. That move responded to a global market that's shifting away from volatility and toward reliability. Canada was providing the latter.